I'm going to call this meeting of the Middle School Building Committee Thursday, August 15th, 2024, 7:30 a.m., calling it to order. And I'm going to take the roll call of our Mickey Mouse Club. Alexa Anderson,
Present.
Heather Bout,
Right here.
Justin Cameron,
Good morning.
good morning. Robert Conry,
I don't know if Bob's gonna get on this morning.
okay. Gil Dowd,
Good morning.
Peter Fishalis,
Good.
Don Garelio,
Good morning, President.
Andrew Herchek,
Present.
Russ Hughes,
I'm not sure about Russ either.
Lori Hunter, Mark
morning.
Howell. So you, Carrie LaFleur, is Carrie this morning?
I'm here. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Carrie. I'm here, Chris Popov,
Good morning.
Charlie Parker.
Yes, I'm here.
Yep, thank you, Charlie. Matt Root,
Morning.
Eric Sims was not going to be able to make it. Steve Stashewski. Steve, are you with us? Okay. All righty. So the first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes of July 18th. Does anyone have any corrections or questions about the meeting minutes of July 18th? Okay, seeing none. Let's go through and see if we want to approve those minutes. Does anyone want to?
Motion. I'll make a motion to approve July 18th.
I can second that.
Okay. All right, Alexa,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Peter Fishalis,
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Mark Howell,
Yes.
Pat Nelson, yes. Chris Popov,
I'll abstain. I was not at that meeting.
okay. Charlie Parker,
Yes.
Matt Root,
Yes.
and Stephen, have you joined us? Has Stephen joined us yet? No. Okay, so minutes are approved. Heather, do you have a monthly update for us? Heather, a communications update?
Oh, sorry. Were you looking for, I lost audio there for a second.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we are all ready for communications. Let's see, we had 2 emails since the last meeting. The first was from a community member letting us know about the select board consent agenda item to potentially expand this committee. And the second was an update on that topic from our own chair, Pat Nelson, and somewhat explaining some of the timing of the fact that there had been a letter earlier. I guess it didn't get to us. And since this is on our agenda, I'll just pass it right on to that.
Okay. All right, so we do have a vote this morning, and we did. I guess I want to preface this with back in July, there was a request made to, or there was an item on the consent agenda at the select board to expand, to amend the charter for the middle school building committee. And the amendment would be to expand the membership. And this has happened in the past when the committee has gone to the select board and requested them to expand the membership. And that has taken place. But this was kind of done in a little bit of a different way. So I wanted to, when the select board discussed it, they determined that we really needed to discuss whether or not we need to expand the membership. And so Mark agreed to come today and to make his suggestion that we expand the membership so that we could open that up for discussion. So Mark, do you want to take the floor?
Yes, I do. If I may, the whole building committee is a creation of the town and the select board, which establishes the charge and creates the membership. And the charge, as you mentioned, Pat, has been modified in the past. Most recently, there was changes in the voting membership, as well as the addition that really allowed us to continue to benefit from the service of Heather Ballot, who came off the school committee with a role in this committee. The decision about the construction of committees is something that the select board takes very seriously. And of course, when we get feedback that something routinely, the appointments and these types of changes are often on our consent agenda because they're not controversial. This is our primary role, which is taking advantage of the wealth of volunteer talent that we have in this community to serve on committees. And this is a point in which I want to pause and thank all of you. This is a committee that functions very well and is in charge of one of the most substantial projects that's going on in town at the moment, and arguably for quite some time. So thank you all for your service on this committee. We had received the request from Court Booth, who has served on this committee for quite some time and has served the educational institutions of this town for much, much longer than that. And receiving that request, really had no expectation that there was likely to be any concern, because it's really quite consistent with past practices. However, as soon as we became aware of the fact that there were people that wanted to weigh in on that, and I would suggest that in having this discussion now, recognize that this is a select board decision and it is on the agenda for Monday's meeting. And so what you're really having an opportunity to do here, what we're all having an opportunity to do is discuss the substance of that and provide input to the select board for its decision. Given that, I really am open to it and want to hear what we have. I think Court outlined in his letter the rationale and the reasons, and I don't think there's a lot I can add to that.
Thank you, Mark. And Mark is absolutely right. The select board has the authority and the power to appoint members to all committees. And I think that what made this a controversial issue, and I want to speak to that, not just as the co-chair of this committee, but someone who's served on a number of committees in town. It didn't come to us first. So committees typically would reach out to the select board and say, we need to expand our committee for a specific reason. And that's exactly what happened with Heather and when Steve Stashewski came on. So to me, the issue is not who we want to have on the committee. It really is not about people, it's about the process. And what I'm trying to do is take us back to what is the practice of the community, of all the committees, to have a discussion within the committee. Do we feel that we are functioning well at this point? Do we need to expand the committee? And I'm going to just speak personally that I feel really strongly about this, that serving on a committee is a huge responsibility. And I value the work of all the committees in town. And when you have a charter and you have you have certain rules and you have things set up, and then you have a system for bringing members onto a committee that will enhance the work of the committee at any given time during the work of committee, those steps need to be followed. It's not just a it's not how do I say it? It's not a little thing to change the charter and to have the committee expand its membership. it's something the committee should really want and need and be able to articulate why we need to expand the committee. Now, I think there are certain circumstances in which the select board could very easily, or other people in town could say, gee, this committee is falling down in some area. They need a specific skill set to help their committee function, which is what happened in the case of bringing Stephen Sishesky, who I'm sorry he isn't here since I'm talking about him, because he brought in some construction experience at a time the committee could benefit from that. So I just wanted to preface our discussion with my feelings about this and really keep the focus on whether or not we as a committee want to request that the select board expand, and then if we do, what are the areas or skills or attributes that we want in a new member to enhance our work for the next, 5 or 6 months of the project. So with that, I will open for discussion. Dawn, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Pat. I'm happy to have that discussion happen. I wanted to go back to process and transparency. And I have 2 questions for Mark, if I may. Mark, the request that you mentioned that came in to change the charter, was that made public? Was that a public request?
The request that we received was a request from court to continue to serve. And the process that I used was the same process that I would use for any committee that was where we got a request, which is first, check to see are there any openings, and it turned out that they were not. So I went back and researched some of the history of the changes in membership. Those of you that have been here on this committee longer than I have would know that there was quite a bit of change in 2022, mostly removing the voting status for staff, which is something that we typically don't do in Concord. Usually citizens are the only voting members of the committees that we have, unless there's some statutory reason not to. So when I looked at that and I understood the rationale, I recognized that the way to do that would be to change the charge. And so that's why I brought that change to the select board.
But was it done publicly? Was there a green card submitted? Was there a public request that was issued? I mean, even must have gone to the select board. I guess I don't understand how that process works. In the case of Heather, we brought it in front of Matt. We said, and actually I asked the question of the committee, is anyone willing to do the job that Heather was doing? It was critical at the time. It was communications. We were deep into needing to pass the vote. So she rolled off. I think there was comment that she could stay on at the appointment of the chair of the school committee. That did not happen. So I said in a meeting, is anyone willing, raise your hand, to do the communications piece that we desperately need right now? No one, crickets. So with that, we went to Matt and said, would you be willing to change the charter in order to keep her on to fill that critical role? There was discussion back in June of 2021. It continued on. I think it finally got voted in January of 2022 at the select board level, but it was very publicly discussed and requested from our committee via Matt, who was at the time our liaison. My second question to you, Mark, why didn't it come up in new business on July 18th, the day that the consent agenda was posted for the select board?
I believe I've answered that question before, but my simple response is I did not really see this as a particularly controversial or substantive piece of business. Again, as soon as I became aware of the fact that there were going to be concerns about this, we decided to postpone it until this group could meet. I'm really interested in hearing from all of you. I know that there are other members of the select board that are paying attention to this conversation. And in terms of following process, our choices typically in Concord are when there appears to be a concern about doing something, hit pause, find out what those concerns actually are, and then make a new decision about what to do. And so I would suggest that this is the time to hear from the group, and thank you for your input.
I just have one last point, and I'm happy to have the rest of the committee discuss it. I just want to point out that some of the people that are involved in how this went down with the request and the consent agenda and whatnot were the same people that accused this committee of not being transparent. And I just want to point out that, you know, process and governance should be transparent. I believe in it. When, you know, when it was brought up 3 years ago that we should be more transparent, we went out of our way to be so. So I'd just like to point out that from where I sit, that's one of my biggest issues with this is the lack of transparency. So with that, I'm happy to stay quiet, let the committee discuss.
Okay, I'm gonna hit Mark, I appreciate you saying hit pause and let's go back. I want to hit pause and hit rewind. I think that the task before the committee now is not so much to discuss what has gone down, but whether or not the committee feels that we need to expand our membership and what are the skills and attributes we would need to make our committee more functional, that we would go to the step of asking the select board to amend the charter and expand the membership. So that's the discussion I want to open up. It's really about whether or not the committee feels, hey, we really could use some help in a particular area, and we'd like to expand the membership at this time. So, questions, comments, input? This could be a long morning.
I'll pop in, Pat. I have a question. Adding an additional member would also create a scenario where if everyone's present, we could have split votes. Is that a concern at all of this committee? Because then it would increase our voting membership to 14 members. And split votes generally fail. That's just something I had a concern about.
You know, that's an interesting point. I hadn't even thought about that, but I do believe I've heard that was why we have, although I might be getting my boards mixed up, I'm on a lot of boards, that why you have an uneven number. I don't know
Right.
if that's a town
Yeah.
policy or not.
I can comment on that. I'm aware of that. It does raise the possibility. My observation is that this committee tends to be much more united than that. You always have that possibility. If one person doesn't show up for a meeting, you still have the possibility that you can end up with an even number and somehow have a situation where you have a tie. In such a large committee, it's much less of a concern than, you know, something like a 5-member board, or where you can easily find yourself in that situation. So although I recognize that it does change the situation around that possibility, it didn't seem that there was really much of a concern given the size of the group.
Thank you, Alexa. Thank you.
Can I make one other sort of comment?
Mhm.
You know, I'm one of the only, Mark, me, and I guess Andrew are the only people on this committee who are like the select board elected officials. And one of the things that I get concerned about from where I sit is, we live in a really small town, and I worry about the optics of cronyism. Court specifically, I think, is already on at least 2, if not 3 town committees. And I get worried about the optics of those of us who are in charge, elected to represent the town, that, when we continue to install our favorites or our friends or sort of people who we like in charge of things. I know of several people off the top of my head that as recently as this year were told they cannot be on a second town committee because they're already on one. And that has been told to these people by members of the select board. So I worry about that. And again, I think that's unique perspective as someone who's elected, that those aren't the optics we want in a small town, where we really need to make sure we're making everyone feel like they're valued and included. So that's
I
my
appreciate your point, Alexa. I am going to keep redirecting us to trying to have that conversation that we weren't able to have before this whole thing started. Do we feel, or do we not feel, that we need to expand the committee, and what would we need for that committee? And I will also acknowledge, to your point, I do serve on 2 committees, and the select board does make exceptions. And in some ways, the exception that was made for me is the same reason that it was, seen that Heather would bring something to the committee that was necessary and serve on at that time. So there are exceptions. There are always exceptions made. But really, our business today is how are we? It kind of gives us a time to refresh ourselves. How are we doing? And do we feel like we need to expand the committee? We will, whatever we give back to the select board, it will be up to the select board. They will make this decision. But I think that it would be remiss of us not to give back what we as a committee feel, and not just the committee chairs, but the committee. So I see Dawn has her hand up again, and I really want to hear from some of the other committee members about how you feel, whether or not we feel like we need to expand the committee, ignoring people. Okay.
I was just gonna rephrase it, Pat. That's all. I
Okay.
wasn't actually gonna comment. Like,
Go
are
ahead,
we missing
rephrase.
anything? Is our committee, are there any holes in our committee? Are we missing anything? Do we need to supplement the committee in any way?
Peter.
Hi. So as a community member on this board, I've watched it work. I'm not an original member, but I was asked to come on when there was a vacancy. And from my perspective, if I look at how the board has functioned and the committee has functioned, I think it's a highly functioning committee. And I've been very impressed at the thoughtfulness of the committee. And at this point, in direct response to your question, Pat, I don't really see the need for or a gap that we are missing where it would warrant bringing on somebody. Now, I recognize, Court's experience on the school board and with this committee and so forth. So maybe there's an exception there, but from that, in answering that question, I really don't see that we are lacking in any area that would warrant a request to have a member join us.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks.
Tim?
Yeah, just a couple of things. As you all know, I was on the committee for the first year or 2 and then had a gap when I was on recently. When I look at this committee right now, okay, I think the most important things by far are financial review of what's going on as we go toward the end, okay, that we're staying within the budget and within the time frame, and technical building experience related to the issues that arise during construction. We're very near the end. Okay, it's hard to believe that, but we're very near the end of a long project, and really, in my mind, stay riveted on monitor the construction process for cost, appropriateness of what we have deemed to happen, and also timing. And as I have said before to some of you, that I've been on 4 building committees over 2 towns, and in terms of those issues right now, financial review of the final process, and in terms of expertise on the committee relating to construction, this committee is probably the best that I've seen in monitoring those aspects. I think we're in good control. I think changes are monitored well. I think they're thought out well. They're thoughtfully brought to this committee for discussion. I don't see, in my opinion, in terms of, to Pat's point, to focus on the issue of what expertise we need, I think we're fine. I think we're doing a good job right now in terms of the process of taking this project to the end. And my biggest concern is to create the notion that we're not, okay, when everything is going pretty well. So those are my comments. I would tend to not change things.
Thank you, Tim.
I have one brief comment. My raise hand thing is not working on my Zoom.
Thank you, Andrew.
I am brand new to this committee. I think this is my 3rd meeting, so I don't have a lot of skin in this game, but very thankful to be part of it. I was at the select board meeting, and what I heard was this was more of a ceremonial appointment, and it sounds like now we're talking about need, and we're talking about skill set on this committee. So I think if it is more ceremonial, then I think we can punt the discussion and talk about that when we near the end, and kind of move on with our business. But if there is a need, I'm not hearing there's a need, but if there is a need, I'd love to hear it from someone. And I can make a motion too if we want to move on from this discussion.
Andrew, I'd like to just respond to that. And I was at the select board meeting too. And one of the ways the select board referred to this was an honorific for a specific community member. And there's no doubt that there are community members who have served on numerous committees and have made great contributions to the town over time. Again, I'm going to speak as a resident of Concord and someone who's been on a lot of committees. I think it's a bad precedent for committee membership to be seen as an honorific. It's committee membership needs to be who can make what we need to make the committee work at any given time in the committee's life. So I just that is one of the reasons why I'm trying to keep this on the general goals and values and mission of committee work in Concord versus specific individuals, or having it be a way of honoring people. Now, what did come up, and I thought was a really important thing that came up at the select board, was how we honor all the people who have contributed to the middle school building project. And perhaps we have been remiss in not raising up those people who have passed, or not passed, didn't pass, who have left the committee, but had made contributions in the past. And there are a number of people who have left the committee, but have made contributions in the past. And I want to make sure that we keep that on our agenda to honor all of those people when we have our ribbon cutting and when we open this amazing school, and when we thank all the people who spent so much time and energy on this project. So Andrew, I just wanted to respond to that since you raised it. It's something that's been top of my mind. You can feel free to make, I've forgotten the word.
Motion.
a motion, thank you. But I really would like to hear from other people. I know this may feel awkward. Ultimately, guys, this is the select board's decision. We are giving them our input. They need to know whether or not this committee feels like it wants to expand the committee. Heather?
Well, let's see, lower hand. Thank you. And what you said, Pat, I really want to respond to that right now. I have thought the same thing about, wow, people have put a lot of time into this committee. And it would be a shame not to be able to be at the ribbon cutting and to be recognized. And there are a lot of them, having been involved in this process from before there was a building committee. There have been a lot of several people who have put in a lot of time. So I would just like to reiterate, and I am happy to, help figure out who's been involved and reach out to people, that at the point that we are doing recognitions and doing ribbon cutting and everything, I think everybody should be invited. So I think that's a great idea. On the note of, do we need something else? I guess I'm kind of like you. I'm open to hearing needs from anybody else. I have not come up with any. I do agree with what Tim said, and what Peter said about this being a very efficient committee. I feel like it's running very well. I'm certainly open to anybody suggesting needs that we have, but I don't know of any.
Thank you, Heather. Matt?
Thanks, Pat. I mean, I just wanted to go on record. I guess I don't feel like we have a need for any additional skill sets that we're missing at this time.
Thank you, Matt.
So I'd just like to make the comment, and I appreciate you reiterating that it is a select board decision. I think the select board is listening carefully. I know I am. And given that, I think that it's perfectly okay at this point to recognize there's a sense of the committee. And if there's anybody on the committee, or really anyone from the public who wants to weigh in and feels more comfortable doing that, either directly with a select board member, either myself or another member of the board, or at our meeting. This is not on the consent agenda. All of those forms are available to you, and I understand why, in some cases, making your opinion known in a public meeting may be uncomfortable for some people, and so I think that we should, not put pressure on people to feel like they have to say something in that form.
Well, I thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And being someone in the education world, I do feel like I want to put pressure on the committee to, to at least weigh in. But nobody has to. I can't make anybody. But I would appreciate if anybody else wants to weigh in on this.
Yeah, I'm just, making it clear that there are other ways for people to have input. I have received some input from members of the committee as well as members of the public on this subject, some of which have come to the select board in the form of correspondence, and some of it private. So, all of those avenues are available, and again, it is on the agenda on Monday.
Okay, Andrew, did you want to make a motion?
I can. I'm learning how to make motions, so I can give it a go.
Okay.
I guess I move to recommend that the CMSBC makes a formal recommendation that the select board not amend the charge to change the committee.
Any discussion?
We need a second first.
I'll
second
We need
it.
a second.
Discussion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Peter. Any further discussion?
I guess my only discussion would be, I would like to echo what you and Heather said about ensuring that all participants of this committee, past and present, get the recognition that they deserve, and however that will look at the sort of conclusion of the project. I think that is, again, in a small town, the right thing to do, because it takes all of us to bring these things to fruition. So, however I can help to do that, and you know, I'm open.
Okay, so we'll take a vote, roll call vote on Andrew's motion to recommend to the select board that, or to send the message to the select board that the middle school building committee does not see a need to expand our membership at this time. Is that fair, Andrew?
Yep.
Okay. So if you're in favor of that, say yes. If not, say no. Alexa,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
let's see, Peter,
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Mark Howell.
I'll abstain.
Okay. Pat, yes. Chris,
No.
no. Charlie,
No.
no. Matt,
Yes.
okay, I want to thank everybody for this discussion. This has been difficult because it's for me, it's raised a bigger question about how committees operate and the role of the committees in determining their needs and determining their needs with the select board. And to me, it was much more of a process issue. I worry that personalities took the forefront in some ways in people's minds, but I really don't think this is a personalities or a people issue or who it was, or it was really just how it was done. And I'm hoping to send a message to the select board, and I will be at the select board meeting, Mark, that I really feel strongly that kind of process really needs to be followed, that committees are consulted before things come up to the select board.
On that note, I want to apologize if I created, and I would take responsibility for creating that discomfort, and I apologize for it.
Thanks, Mark. I didn't
you.
think it was intentional. I just thought,
It was not.
it was just it's unfortunate. These things happen. But I do appreciate people taking part in this difficult conversation. And let's move on. The LPM update, because we do have a project we're doing.
All right. Thank you, Pat. Happy to go through the update this morning. We're going to go through the finances first and then do the construction report for you guys. So let me pull this up on the screen. Okay. So jumping right in here. This is the budget summary, and I'm gonna preface all the financial reporting in saying that one of the things that we're working through right now is the CTA requisition. We usually have that buttoned up and shown on these financial reports. You will see here that is not the case this month. We're right there. Just had to tweak some final numbers before we could get it approved. So it's not reflected in here, which is why some of the numbers look a little different this month. So by any means, this is the budget summary. Just to highlight a few things on the construction side, we now have 1.1 million in committed costs for change orders. So that is reflective of all of the change orders that have been approved to date. We have $334,000 in change in forecasted costs for pending change order work. And, some of that has been billed towards, about a little under half has been billed for change orders at this point for construction. No real changes in the A&E front, as well as the administrative for OPM or others. We do have the costs committed now for the FF&E and technology, so that's reflective of where we're at in the process for POs. There's still some POs being issued for the FF&E, but we've kind of pre-captured that here. So committed cost to date is 102 million and change. Expenditures to date is 61.6 million. That'll go up in the next week with the CTA rec and a few other invoices. So, but that's where we stand overall on the budget. Cash flow. We've got $13,000 in expenditures since last month. So that's brings us to 61,642,943, and then these are the projections moving forward to balance out the budget to 111,516,000 to account for all of the budget. The 4.2 again is the contingency buckets that we don't anticipate ever touching. This is the contingency usage chart. So it's now reflective of everything that we've used for construction changes and the hard cost contingency, the 1.1 million, the forecasted, and 334,000. So we've got around 3.1 million in contingency remaining for construction, which is 68%. Soft costs, we still have 70% of the soft cost contingency available. TRC update for August. So we have processed three change orders since we last met, 17, 18, and 19. We'll get into the details of those shortly. So those were shown as committed, and the budget adjustments were made accordingly to move money from contingency to cover those. And then these are the full list of invoices since the previous meeting. So 261,960.81. We've got the CTA requisition in progress. It's around 3.8 million. So nice, healthy progress payment there for work in place. And then the Hill Lira number 45 invoice is also pending. So just wanted to show those. As far as changes, this is change order number 17. These have already been approved, accepted by the TRC. So there's no, they're under 50 grand. There's no need to vote on these today. This is just kind of an informational session opportunity for you guys to ask questions if you have any, just to better understand the changes. And I can turn this over to Jen to kind of talk through some of the individual PCOs.
Sure. Thanks, Ian.
Yep.
So this is change order 17. It consisted of 4 PCOs. The first one being just some added electrical scope. There was a display, TV display that we added in the media center that was purchased through the technology budget. But this is just some electrical scope infrastructure to support that. The next one is just also some electrical for the gym window shades. Those are motorized because they're higher up in the gym. So these were just some additional additional electrical that we needed, given the configuration out there. And then the last two are just some door frame, some hollow metal frame modifications that were required. Just either some something that was not specified correctly. So we needed to make a couple frame adjustments. So this total change order was an increase of $17,807.70. Are there any questions on change order 17? Okay.
Seeing none, we'll
Being
jump to
none,
18.
18 was just one PCO, and this was related to some additional drainage tie-ins for the PV canopies. So CMLP's project, there was one particular PV canopy that has downspouts, and this runs along the main entrance walkway. So rather than sort of dumping all of the water from the downspouts onto that walkway, we proposed some underground tie-ins that would tie into the drainage structures that we have on site. So this is $37,050.34. And this is my understanding. This is something that CMLP will be funding as it's related to their project, but it was important that we get that infrastructure installed now. Going back later would involve removing curbing and pavement. So it was important just to get that in there as they were doing the site work.
Yep,
Any
this is on
questions?
the list of reimbursable costs for the CMLP project, so.
Any questions? All right, and the last one is change order 19. It consisted of two PCOs. The first one just being some framing, that's a structural beam that was shown incorrectly in the drawing, so they just had to cut it back a little bit. So this was done on T&M, very short money. And then the second one was just some electrical coordination with the HVAC for an air handling unit. We had to adjust the breaker size and increase it. So the total of this change order is only $1,731.89.
Yep.
Those are the change orders for this past month.
Great. Thank you, Jen.
Mhm.
Are
Moving
there any
on.
questions about
Oh,
the
sorry.
change order? Anybody? Okay.
Oh, good. Good. So moving on to the construction update this month. You'll see in general, you know, the perimeter of the building is pretty much buttoned up at this point. There's very few things to be infilled on the exterior. So we've got a nearly weather tight building, and just going through building by building here. You know, we've got a good percentage of things complete in building C as far as framing and the MEP infrastructure, either complete or nearly complete, as well as all the sheetrock work. There's a substantial amount of painting that's been done in the spaces. So we've got a final coat that remains in most of the spaces. Tile and other wall finishes are 65% complete. They've knocked out a good portion of the ceiling grid for the ceiling tile, so those are 85% complete. We've got cabinetry at 25% complete. That's started since the last meeting, excuse me. And we're looking to see some flooring commence in September. So we're kind of moving to, you know, a different phase of building C here, where you start to see things being buttoned up, and you start to see some of the final finishes and what you'll see on day one when you walk through the building as an end user. So it's pretty exciting to get to that point and start to see those finishes in place, and see things getting buttoned up completely in those spaces. So that's exactly what they're working towards in building C. So building B has made good progress as well. There's the exterior envelope is 95% complete. The framing is in great shape. It's right there as well. The electrical, HVAC and plumbing roughs are about 85% complete in those spaces. This curtain wall has been since completed, just kind of punching that out on the bridge. And the curtain walls are in for the media center and cafeteria as well. Those just need to be buttoned up and sealed. The sheetrock is about 50% complete in building B, and they started painting in there as well. Building A, we've got envelope near completion. The two things that remain are the curtain wall section in the gym along the roof line, and then there's two other windows that need to go in building A. The roofing is near completion. In the auditorium, there's good progress with partitions and kind of the framing around the perimeter of the auditorium. The MEP rough is 50% complete. So just trying to knock out all the in walls so that they can continue with progress in that space. Site work, there's a lot happening on the site. It's been great being able to do that during the summer because we've been having all the construction workers parking in the school parking lot, which it's been a huge help to the site work of the project. That's going to switch back here in the near future. So they're trying to kind of button up these areas and get it to the point where we can see some car traffic back on site for parking and whatnot. But we're in great shape for permanent power. That's expected in September. The curbs are 75% complete. The concrete sidewalks are going in. So we're starting to see some site concrete happening. We've got some bollards that have been installed. About 80% of those have been installed. And the landscaped areas are starting to take loam. So really starting to see those areas taking shape in the site and the parking area. One other thing to highlight is we've been coordinating with Verizon for the phone service, and we've got a number of those lines that need to be installed. So we have a purchase order that we're pushing through this month, and then we would expect to see those being installed in October. So good shape on utilities as far as getting infrastructure to the building. And we've got some new aerial photos thanks to Hunter. So this is a great aerial shot of the building in progress to date. We've got some interior photos of building C, so you can kind of see some of the things happening there with paint, with the ceiling grid, other things taking shape in that space. We've got building B and A interior, so a little less buttoned up in these spaces, but trying to get framing and in-wall blocking and things done in those spaces. Some action happening on the rooftop. They've got some equipment on the rooftop at this point. So you can see equipment that's landed to date and just preparing some of the pads for other equipment on the rooftop. Site work. We've got concrete sidewalks happening, as I mentioned before. Some of the structures on site going into place And then curtain wall for B and A. So this is the media center and cafeteria area in the back of the building. So that's what the curtain wall looks like back there now. It's good to have those buttoned up. The last shot is just another aerial view for you guys to kind of see site and building at the same time. So certainly a lot of exciting things happening, marching towards the finish line early next year. So
Ian, can I just hop on your comments and just sort of preview a little? I don't think it's going to surprise anyone on this committee to hear it's crunch time, right? So we've added another meeting every week pretty much right now with CTA just to talk schedule and look at all the moving pieces. There's no major issues, but it's so tight. I'm just going to name that. It's so tight that we're just watching how it all is falling together and working with them to see what levers we might have to move here or there. So there's likely to be an update for you more specific than that in the no later than next meeting, if not earlier. As with any project of this size, you know, with a deadline, you're just trying to be sure you see how it's all going to come together, given a really tight timeline. So nothing major, like I said, nothing major at all. It just, you know, we're having to look at priorities and occupancy needs and, you know, are there any things that need to go a little further out than maybe we had originally thought? So things to bring to you. That's the conversation. That is the focus right now with CTA and all the folks that are on this call. And certainly in September, we're going to bring you a very clear update of schedule. But nothing atypical, just crunch time as we march towards these last 6 months.
Thanks, Lori. Chris?
Thanks for the update, Ian. It looks great. Question about exterior finishes. In Building C, the exterior finishes are virtually done. Have they performed well during some of the extreme rains and winds we've had this summer?
Yeah, I can maybe pass that along to either Jen or Jonathan to kind of speak on the testing and where we're at with performance of windows, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I can just comment. You know, no issues with water, air penetrating the building envelope of the brick. We are going through the standard window testing now. We'll be starting curtain wall testing very soon as well. Some of the first window tests we did just as on the mock-up. At the beginning of the test, they started to get a little bit of water in through handle area. They've figured out, you know, what the issue was. They've been working on addressing that on all the installed windows. And as soon as next week, we're going to continue with our window testing to confirm that fix has addressed any issues. But overall, very good. Doing very, very well with building envelope currently.
Dawn?
Thanks, Pat. I just want to point out, every time I've driven by, it's exciting to see the exterior is definitely coming together and the site work. And I love seeing it, you know, come to fruition. So congrats to the team that's making that all happen out on site. I do want to reiterate what Lori was saying about crunch time. I want to point out that our schedule, remember everyone years ago when we talked about schedule and timing, if we were trying to finish this time of year, it would be a nightmare. Every project I'm aware of that's trying to open this fall in a couple of weeks is a hot mess. So just want to take a moment to appreciate it. Will be a difficult task to move everyone mid-year, but I also want to say that, you know, this time of year, they call it, what do they call it? The summer, like not just summer slammers, but like this time of year for school projects is notorious for being chaos, trying to get things done last minute. And I can appreciate that we're in that. We're 6 months out from like finish, right? But we are also not going to be trying to finish when every other school that's under construction is trying to finish. So going back to those, you know, years ago when we talked about schedule, I just want to point out that I think we're, you know, in good shape. Like any other construction project, this will come down to the wire. They all do. But thanks to the OPM and design team for, you know, staying on top of the contractor. So good job, everyone.
Thank you.
And also
Dawn,
what they're
we saw
doing
the
now
Olympics,
is,
it often comes to the wire.
what's that?
But with the Olympics, it often comes down to the
That's
wire.
right. That's right.
Yes.
Like they might finish with 0.001 seconds left. But also what's exciting to see right now, we don't necessarily get to see, which will be a lot of work on the inside. So maybe it's worth trying to find a time this fall that's not disruptive to the school or to anyone else that we can get the committee back in there. So just putting that out there, I'd love to see it again. And I probably haven't been in since we were there like May or June as a committee. So I'm sure a lot's happened since then. So kind of gets exciting on the inside this time of the construction. So
Yeah, I'll work on a date to invite everybody in.
yeah, great. Thanks, Lori.
Matt,
Thanks, Pat, and Jonathan, thanks for that response. Just to quickly follow up on Chris's question, if there have been any recent commissioning reports, I'd love to see a copy of those. I think it's been a couple months since we've seen one.
We actually just got 2 a day or 2 ago, so I
Super.
will make sure that those get distributed. Yep.
Thank you, Jonathan.
anyone else? Okay. So did I miss something? Did we, usually Steve makes a statement that the technical review committee reviewed the change orders and then we vote to accept them. Did we, this is a senior moment, I want to admit that. Did we miss that?
No. So, yeah, I think for these particular change orders, these were under the $50,000 threshold.
Okay.
So they were approved by the TRC. No need to vote on those today. We're in good shape. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just didn't want to skip something. All right. Is there any new business? Tim.
Yeah, just a very quick thing, and at some time in the near future, when it's appropriate, I would like to have a short discussion. One of the questions I get, which is only because we're working on the school, is what's going to happen with Peabody, and I realize, you know, there are important things there. So at some point we could just do a process update, because process is important, as we talked about earlier. Who does what? Because the building committee is really limited in that. But so we're all on the same page, because we get answered those questions. At some point, we should just go over what is the process of what happened, so that we all can answer those questions well. Right?
Tim, I think you read the minds of the select board finance and school committees. It's on Monday night's joint meeting agenda.
Yeah.
So we will have very clear updates at that point, mostly from the select board, because Mark can jump in at any point. That's who's going to make decisions once the school committee turns the building over. Great,
because we, you know, I realize, having done this many times, that the building committee has little say in that, right? It's but we get asked the question, so we should all be on the same page. That's all.
Yeah, we could put that update on the agenda for next time, since the discussions will have started.
Thank you.
Great. I think I can put this under new business. Mark, can you give the committee the details on the Monday night select board meeting? Because I really think that, especially those of you who are not comfortable with the decision that we voted on today, it'd be really important that you were able to be at that meeting or could take advantage of that opportunity. But so what are the details of the meeting? And
so it's our regular time in the select board room at 6 p.m.
Okay.
If I don't know exactly what time the particular issue is on, so I would just encourage people that the agenda is already posted.
Okay, Mark, if you have any power over that, I have reservations for my 45th anniversary dinner in Lenox at 6:30, and I would really like to be there.
It also depends a certain amount, as you probably are aware, we have our public comment period first. And so if that tends to throw a 15-minute
Okay.
variable into the beginning, depending, and routinely we have seen comments on a variety of issues. As you know, there's no shortage of things these days. So I wish I could be a little bit more specific,
No,
but
you know what, 45 years of marriage teaches you anything, you just have to be flexible.
that's right.
Thank you.
Half an hour one way or the other shouldn't matter too much.
All right, public comment. Unless there's anybody else want any new business. Going once, going twice. Okay, Carlin.
Carlin.
Hi, Carlin Reed, 83 with member of the Finance Committee. But speaking on my own behalf, just to let you know, the Finance Committee is planning on having our regular meeting immediately after the Select Board meeting. We're hoping to start at 7 o'clock, but it sort of depends on what happens at the Select Board meeting. So we'll see you there. Thanks.
Any other public comment? Next steps?
Pat, I think it's just worth noting, and I alluded to it already, we may need a meeting before the regularly scheduled one in September. You heard Ian say there were a couple of approvals that didn't, you know, we couldn't pull together before this meeting. So we'll be in touch, but we may need a mid-month meeting, which would probably fall early September.
The next meeting, the next regularly scheduled meeting is September 19th.
Yeah, so I think we're pretty much definitely going to need an early September meeting, but
Yeah.
we'll firm that up and let the chairs help us pick the date, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right, well, then I will adjourn this meeting. And one thing I can never remember, do we have to take a full vote on the planning board if well, we don't have, no, I don't, right?
No.
No, okay.
Usually
So
we lose quorum.
I think usually someone moves to adjourn, so I'll move to
Thank you.
adjourn.
Thank you, Heather.